Alright guys, so this video is going to be an intro to PCSL 2-gun geared towards people who have never shot PCSL 2-gun before, or people who have shot a couple matches but aren't really up to speed on anything outside of that, right? Like you went and shot your local, but you want to get more into it and you need a little bit of guidance, or you're not quite sure what's really going on, right? So this is for you, as well as some veteran PCSL shooters who might be able to pick up a thing or two that they didn't know within this. Check it out, and hopefully it's helpful. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Tony Mazza. I'm a USPSA Grandmaster, and we're just coming off PCSL Nationals where I did fairly well in competition division and also won the Grom with Hunter Constantine belt bounty, so that's pretty cool. So if you have not shot PCSL 2-gun, or you've just shot a match or two, and you want to get more into it, which you should, right? PCSL 2-gun is going to be the future of 2-gun. It is taking off across the country with major matches, local matches. It offers a comprehensive rule set, scoring system, target system, organization to fall under, classification. It's just going to be the future of 2-gun, as well as a direct competitor to games like USPSA, IDPA, which not really a competition at this point. But it is coming to the forefront because it's giving people something that the other organizations aren't giving. So in this video, I'm going to go through a ton of different stuff when it comes to PCSL. Division, scoring, general rule sets, differences, a little bit of training, tons of stuff, right? But we're just kind of skimming the surface. This is going to be, I'm going to try and keep it to like a 10-20 minute video, just giving you the initial introduction. If you need to dive into anything in more depth, I'm going to link the rule set as well as the PCSL website in the description on this video, so you can go check it out, get better clarification on stuff and anything else there. So let's get into it. The biggest one that people want to know about is, what division am I shooting in? What guns that I bring to the match, where is that going to stick me, and how is that broken down? So PCSL keeps it pretty simple when it comes to 2-gun. There are 2 divisions. There's not a million like you've got with USPSA. And it's pretty clear cut, and it comes down to how your pistol is set up and how your rifle is set up. So with PCSL, you've got practical division and you've got competition division. The names kind of make it clear which one is which and what equipment is going to fall into each, right? Practical is geared towards your more practical setups, right? Your competition division is geared towards your gamer rifles, right? Stuff with a brake, extended mags, tuned gas, tuned BCG, all of that sort of stuff, right? Gamer guns. Practical is meant for more practical guns, your home defense, duty rifles, suppressed stuff. Practical. Same with pistols. Pistols in practical are going to be more practical minded versus competition, where you can run a tricked out 2011 that's comped and ported. Big difference there. So to get into a little bit on the surface, we've got, when it comes to the pistol, you're limited within practical division to 20 rounds in your mag. So 20 plus 1 can be your starting, but it's 20 rounds. So regardless of mag length, there's nothing that you have to worry about there. So you can run, if you want to run a 33 round mag, you can just load it to 20. It's up to you. So no restrictions there. There's no box that you have to fit the gun in or anything like that. But within practical, you cannot have a compensator, cannot have porting, anything like that. Slide cuts, I believe, are okay, that sort of stuff. Again, for more in-depth stuff, go check the specific rules. But if you're running, Glock 17 with a magwell, and just like your regular carry optics gear, you're going to be good to go. That's going to put you in practical. Just load the 20, not plussing up all the way. Competition, on the other hand, you can load mags to 30. There's no magazine length requirement, but it's 30 rounds. And within competition, you can run 2011s with giant-ass magwells. You can have porting, comps. And on this note, I will mention you can run 2011s in practical. You are just limited to the 20-round capacity, as well as no porting and no comping. So there's not the discrepancy that you have in USPSA between carry optics and limited optics. None of that. It's pretty clear cut. So moving back into competition. Brakes and porting, good to go. Magwells, good to go. Also, a huge difference between the two is going to be there's no power factor floor in competition division. So if you want to run the lightest ammo you can get your gun to cycle, have at it, right? You want to run your comp 2011 with porting, and you want to have it shooting 100 power factor ammo that doesn't move your gun at all, you can go for it, right? No floor there. Practical still has to be 125 power factor, but Nationals is not really running any sort of chrono. There's none of that, no gear check or anything like that. So it's at RO's discretion if that's an issue. I don't think Max, the founder of PCSL, is planning to run chrono at any point as kind of a match admin thing. So not a concern there if you're in competition. Do whatever. But to caveat, you still have to knock down certain targets, right? So PCSL scoring, I'll get into in a minute. If you get a hit on steel, it's good. There's no calibration or anything like that. But if you're shooting something like a swinger activator, where it's steel to fall to activate the swinger, you still need to knock that down in order to proceed with shooting the activated target. So if you load your ammo so light that it's not knocking down the steel, you're going to have a problem. Or if you're sending multiple shots. So that's kind of on you to sort where that line is for you, as well as just general functionality. So beyond that, when it comes to rifle, the bigger difference is going to be brakes versus suppressors, flash hiders, compensators. You can read on PCSL's website the intricacies of what is qualified as a brake versus a comp, everything like that. But there's some meta devices that you can definitely game practical division with that are going to be the better option if you're trying to game versus use your direct practical setup. So when it comes to practical, there is a limit on how light your BCG can be, as well as your muzzle device. Those are going to be the bigger ones that stand out and really start to categorize people into divisions. Competition, it's do whatever the fuck you want. So this is my comp rifle here. It has the giant unrivaled brake on there, tuned gas, lightweight BCG, all of that sort of stuff. So competition, it's have at it. Between the two, there's also this, if you're coming from 3-gun, right, something that you're going to notice a difference with is there's no bags or bipods allowed within 2-gun. Whenever rifle-only PCSL majors get up and rolling, you will be able to shoot with bags and bipods in competition division. Practical, I believe, still doesn't allow those, to keep it more practical. I'm not sure exactly on that. That would be something to double check. But in 2-gun, no bags or bipods or anything like that. It is your gun in competition or practical, how it's set up. So pretty straightforward there. Another thing that's going to really stand out in PCSL 2-gun is equipment swaps are allowed, so long as it fits within certain criteria. So if you're planning to swap, your upper to, say like for one stage you're running your shortened upper with like a 10-inch barrel, and then there's a longer range stage and you want to run your 16-inch with an LPVO, you can do that. So long as you fit within certain requirements that are laid out within the rule set on gear swaps. Another thing is if you're shooting competition division, you are allowed to run a PCC. So if you have a PCC set up for USPSA or what have you, and you've got your gamer rifle set up, you can run PCC one stage where, say, you don't need to really stretch distance, and you can run your gamer rifle on a stage where you do have to stretch distance, or the accuracy demand is going to be such that you don't really want to bring your PCC out for it. So big consideration there. I don't think it's as big of a deal as most people make it out to be, because I've tuned this thing to be far better shooting than even like a mall, right? So top tier PCC, this thing shoots softer. So kind of up to you what you want to do there. I don't think it's a distinct advantage. So you can do it though. If, especially at a local level, you can save money shooting PCC in competition. And I think that's going to open up a lot more doors, which is really cool to see. So I think that kind of covers a lot of the divisional stuff. There's other little admin things like magwells. Magwell size in practical is going to be a little slimmer than what it is in competition. It used to not allow magwells. Now you can have a magwell, but there's a size restriction. Again, all of the little stuff, go check the actual rule set for and get clarification on. At a local, no one's really going to care. so long as you're kind of fitting in the general category. Like, don't go sign up for practical with a muzzle brake or anything like that, right? But if you're gonna go shoot a major, you really should go check the rules and read up on all that before you show up and shoot, so you don't get bumped or anything like that. All right, now on to rules and safety. And a lot of this is going to differ and be compared a little bit to USPSA, because most people coming to PCSL, for the most part, are going to be familiar with USPSA rules and the kind of spread of those into other shooting sports and outlaw matches. So there's a few big differences that you're going to notice coming to PCSL. Big one, there's no safety tables. It's grown-up rules. You can pick a side berm and have at it. So long as you know you're not loading your gun or anything like that at the side berm, you can bring your gun up out of its bag, out of the holster, and so long as you're within a certain distance of the side berm, you're good to go. Out of the way of, the competitive area, off on your own. So, big one there. It's big boy rules, not a lot of monitoring going on there, which is, in my opinion, how it should be. Now, when it comes to the actual stages, there's going to be some differences that you'll notice quite apparently versus USPSA. So, as you can see in this video, we're running around beyond the 180 with an unloaded rifle. This will give USPSA ROs an aneurysm, at least some of them, right? Some are cool. But some of the older crowd, this is gonna rustle their jimmies. But in PCSL, there is the inert firearm denotation, and it only applies to long guns. So, in this stage, right, there was a drop mag target. I'll get into that in a second. But by that, the gun is decidedly cleared and empty on the clock, and the 180 no longer applies to the long gun. So you can break the 180, you can run past people, like you see here where we're connecting bays, and it's considered safe. Then you would load, like on this stage, right? So coming up here, load past the designated firing line, and then it becomes hot again, 180, back in application because the gun is loaded. I forget exactly on this, it was a stage procedural or a DQ if you loaded early. I think it kind of depended where. Or it was a stage DQ, one of the two. Not sure there. Anyways, big difference there. So also, slung rifles, a factor, depending on the stage, right? But it's going to be within the stage. So it's not you unload your gun and you can go pointing it at people. No, it's going to be denoted within the stage, and the RO is going to be the one deciding whether you've done it appropriately or not. And if you haven't, you're going to get stopped. So, big one there. You can go read up more on that on the PCSL website, and if you're shooting a match and this isn't on the stage, the RO will explain it to you, and it should be pretty clear. It's really straightforward. It's not as complex as some people make it out to be. Just, be smart with it. So beyond that, we'll get into drop mag targets now. So drop mag targets. This target here, so we'll show the rifle one. So it was a head box, and you had to shoot it once after dropping your mag. So at that rate, there's no way for the gun to be loaded, right? It's pretty straightforward. A mag didn't magically appear in the gun, chamber another round, or anything like that. The gun's unloaded for the rest of the stage until it comes to the load point. So at that point, the 180 no longer applies. It's an inert firearm. But with the drop mag target, there is a few things to note. So it is it's a specific designated target within the stage. The RO will tell you what target it is, or it will be very clear, like you see on this pistol stage, where it is that farther steel, it's a different color, and it requires a single hit. But if you miss it, it's a mic. So with the drop mag target, you have the option to reload your gun, chamber another round, drop the mag, engage it again. Not really a move that's worth it. It's eat the mic if you fuck it up. So try not to fuck it up. Adds a little bit of pressure, cool little test of added pressure on the clock, because it's hit or miss, quite literally, to get the points that you need there. But beyond that, like you see in this pistol stage, now I am able to reholster my pistol, load my rifle, and continue on with the rifle segment of this stage before moving down. And that's kind of the function of a drop mag target, right? It's more of a safety line within the stage that allows you to proceed with the rest of the stage in a safe fashion. And the ROs are watching this. It's pretty clear cut as to what's going on there, so not a huge deal. It's pretty straightforward. If you need more clarification on it, go check out the actual rule set. But something to note that's going to be far different versus USPSA or other sports. A big one to note within the differences between PCSL and USPSA. Most people are familiar with DQs in USPSA. Whether you've been DQ'd yourself or seen someone DQ'd or just know what gets you DQ'd, which you should, you know that you're you're done once you're DQ'd. PCSL, there's such a thing as stage DQs. So certain actions within PCSL can get you a stage DQ versus an actual match DQ. So if you catch a stage DQ, you're not DQ'd from the match, but you're stopped on the stage, can no longer continue to shoot the stage, and you get 0 points for the stage. But you can continue on to the next stage and the rest of the match and continue to shoot. You're not going home. But the actions are a little bit different compared to USPSA versus PCSL with what gets you a stage DQ with what gets you a match DQ. Because there are still match DQs in PCSL for more egregious safety things versus lesser safety issues. So to cover a few, and there's a longer list that you can go into on the PCSL website, but we'll just cover a select few big ones. So when it comes to stage DQs, a dropped unloaded gun. So going back to the drop mag target, if you drop your pistol on the reholster after the drop mag target, it's known to be unloaded, stage DQ, right? So you're gonna be stopped there, but you're not going home for a dropped gun. But if it's loaded, and say, you go to draw out of the holster after dumping your rifle and you drop your loaded pistol, match DQ. So dropped loaded firearms, match DQ. Dropped unloaded firearms, stage DQ. Big difference there. Another one, prone with a hot pistol. So prone is its own thing within PCSL. There are stipulations as to what needs to happen when you go prone. Generally speaking, the pistol is going to have been dumped or unloaded via drop mag target. If you go prone without those conditions and you're hot or it's just not verified by the RO or clear, stage DQ. So this is actually a pretty big one. So moving with your finger in the trigger, stage DQ versus USPSA, full match DQ. And you see some ROs love to hand this out all the time, and there's a reason for it, but within PCSL, it's not a full match DQ like it is in USPSA. But if you're moving with your finger in the trigger and you pull the trigger and you AD, accidentally discharge, or negligently discharge in this case, it's just called accidental discharge within the rules. So to note that is a match DQ. You're going home, right? If it's clear that it was negligent and the RO calls it as such, you're going home. Flagging yourself either with a loaded or unloaded gun is still a DQ. I believe there's a full match DQ. I believe there's a difference though when it comes to slinging a rifle or a rifle that's slung. That's its own thing, right? Because obviously if it's slung, it might be pointed at you in some capacity while it's unloaded. But if you're running around with an unloaded pistol and you do this or whatever, you're going home. 180 brakes, still a match DQ, except again with an unloaded firearm where it doesn't apply, right? And that's going to be stage by stage. So keep that on your mind. PCSL also has the 2-strike system, and this is an amazing system that I believe USPSA really needs to implement, as well as IPSC as a whole, because it's a greater issue on the international level or international matches if you've shot those. And that's more of a cultural thing. But within the 2-strike system, cheating of various capacities is a 2-strike system. I believe you can be a 1-strike DQ, but there's a list of what qualifies as cheating. So like if you're on a stage, right, and you intentionally bump your eye pro or ear pro off, that is a 1-strike. Because you're intentionally doing it to get a reshoot. Because if your eye pro or ear pro for whatever reason gets bumped out of place, you can stop yourself on a stage if it was accidental and get a reshoot, because it's just a safety issue, right? We don't want anyone to go deaf or blind because something happened. It's a competition. This isn't an actual defensive thing. Your hearing and eyes matter, right? So that's one thing. Backtracking on a stage is another. So if, say it's a linear stage and you're going from back here to up here and you're kind of shooting targets and the RO is following with you. If you realize that like you had a mic back here or you forgot a target or something like that and you're like way at the front of the stage and you all of a sudden just start sprinting back, and we've seen people do this before, that is going to get you a strike because it is considered unsportsmanlike conduct. Yes, you can do it, but for the most part, you wouldn't. But people do it, or they'll do it because they know that they had a no-shoot. Say you see yourself drop a no-shoot up front, and you're like, I don't want that. People will sprint back, and if you're beyond the RO, it's a reshoot. So you're getting strikes for that. If not an outright DQ, that's probably going to be a little discretion-based. My favorite one, though, and this is something that USPSA really needs to consider because it is greatly unsportsmanlike conduct in my opinion, is you can get 2 strikes and DQ'd for not resetting. So if you are noticed to be not resetting by ROs and it's egregious or very apparent on your part that you're not resetting, you're getting 1 strike, you do it again, you're getting 2 strikes, and then you're going home. So reset. And this is, I'm sure you've all shot matches where you've got that 1 or 2 dudes who's just, they're not doing shit. They're not helping or anything like that. They're just sitting around playing with their mags, they're pretending to do something, pretending to clean, because they don't want to go paste or anything like that. In PCSL, you're going home if you're one of those people, or you're going to just be forced to actually help with the reset, which in my opinion is great. USPSA needs to do it, IPSC especially. So that should cover a lot of the general rules and differences if you're coming from USPSA or other shooting sports into PCSL. Again, this is one of those things that if you want greater clarification on stuff or more in-depth overviews of the rules, go check out the actual full rule set. A lot of it's just going to look very familiar to USPSA. There's not going to be a huge difference if you're coming from USPSA into PCSL. Most of it's going to be pretty familiar or pretty much the same. Scoring. If you're coming from USPSA, the scoring system is going to be incredibly familiar. It's hit factor. Points divided by time. If you're coming from 3-gun and times plus, I assume that you've shot enough of a variety of matches that you know how hit factor works, right? It's not any 2 on paper, it's you actually have to shoot alphas. I know that's hard for some of you 3-gunners, but it is what it is. Also in PCSL, it's minor only scoring within 2 guns. So you are allowed to bring out your 308 or whatever if you want, but you're still going to be scored the same as the dude shooting 223, right? There's no benefit to shooting a larger caliber, save for, making yourself happy for whatever reason. So big difference there between some other 2 guns, and hit factor is the scoring system that these games need to be using, in my opinion. It is the superior method. It's a fine balance between multiple skills, multiple disciplines, and pushing speed, points, and accuracy. But something to keep in mind when it comes to 2-gun is just based on the time consumption within stages, the hit factors are going to be low. So for those of you who are used to shooting a little sloppy, especially, multi-gunner, 3-gunners shooting times plus, or USPSA dudes who are used to high hit factor stages at their locals, you're in for a bad time if you're shooting pretty sloppy. You want to shoot pretty clean in PCSL, so keep that in mind. Now we're going to get into target types. So as you can see behind me, there's a few PCSL targets. Within the PCSL rule set, at locals, you can use whatever target you want. So if your club just has access to USPSA, IPSC, what have you, you can run those within the PCSL system. Majors, different story. But with PCSL, they have their own targets and their own scoring system within the targets. So it's going to look pretty familiar if you've shot USPSA, IDPA, 3-gun, right? Is you've got your A zone, your C zone, your D zone. But PCSL, we also have the T zone. So within hit factor, right, we're trying to score points, right? So, alphas are 5, charlies are 3, deltas are 1. The T zone is 10 points, so the equivalent of 2 alpha. If you hit the T zone and it's your only shot on paper, you're getting 2 alpha, or the 10 points needed to, for 3-gunners, clear the target, to use your terminology. So that is a consideration within the game, is you will see partial configurations where, it's cut off here, T-zone shots are the move, because you're just going to get those 2 alpha. The risk, though, if you're playing the T-zone game, you can just shoot 1, but say you shoot here, that's the C zone. And if there's just 1 on there, you're getting Charlie Mike. If you're in the T-zone though, you're getting the 2 alpha. So a little bit different there when it comes to that. It's a strategic thing within the game. Don't worry about it too much initially, but it's something to consider. And I may do a longer video on T-zones usage at some point. Yeah. But something to consider, right? So if you're also familiar with USPSA or IPSC targets, I don't have any near me now, but the A zone is a little bit smaller, right? So you're gonna have to aim a little bit harder for the most part, because it's not quite 50% the size of a USPSA silhouette, but it feels really close when you're actually shooting them. So the pace shift on these, fairly dramatic. Just something to consider. And then 2 with the targets, we'll start using the minis. So brown is going to be pistol. It's gonna feel very familiar coming from a lot of games. White is going to be a rifle. So if you're used to USPSA, it might take a moment of transition to get used to actually shooting white, but you'll be doing it with the rifle. So for you pistol guys, it might be a little easier to wire your brain in that capacity. In that case though, with white being a scoring target, red is your no shoot. So scored the same as a white target in other games. You know, you still have the perf working. It's just a no shoot. Of course, there is also hardcover, black, and that's going to be the same color on your brown targets, white targets. It's hardcover. So pretty straightforward there. Just a little bit different of a system, but easy enough to adapt to with, you know, just a simple mental shift. As far as other colors go, in USPSA, most people are used to shooting white steel. That's kind of the common flavor. It's what you're going to see at majors for the most part. In PCSL, white steel is rifle-only steel. So can't shoot it with pistol. Most of the time, if it's rifle-only steel, it's going to be far enough away to where there's not going to be a lot of confusion anyways. So pretty clear cut there. Pistol steel, on the other hand, is going to be blue, and for the most part, it's going to be up close, right? So there's still a minimum distance, I believe, somewhere within the rule set for PCSL rifle steel versus pistol steel. So pistol steel, blue, rifle steel, white. I think there's allotment for other colors within there, but it has to be uniform. Red is going to be no shoot steel. As you can see in this video, maybe I actually forget before I cut this in. I don't know if you can see the target in this, but the drop mag target in this stage was yellow. So denoting a different target there. And it was a steel silhouette, so a little bit different of a thing there to consider. But for the most part, pretty straightforward. Blue's pistol, white's rifle, easy enough. With that, I was holding these up, right? We'll use one that's not a no-shoot partial. Micros. These are a scoreable target and usable target within the PCSL system. These were used at actually all of the PCSL majors that were held this year. The West Coast Championship, the GOAT Match Gulf of America Tournament, and the PCSL Nationals. We saw these. I don't know if we saw any pistol at the West Coast, but there was no use of pistol micros at Nationals or the GOAT. So, rifle. These are a great tool to stretch the distance on small bays, right? It's scale targets. You stick this at the back of the berm, it's going to feel like it's a lot farther. And it still has the scoring zone on there. You can't really see it on the white side, but it's still on there. T-zone's still there, A-zone, C-zone, D-zone, what have you. And you will see these used, and they are a scoring target. Versus the full size, which is about comparable to an IPSC. So to give you a scale comparison, right? The scales are pretty small, and they do present a fun challenge. If you shoot PCSL matches, you will likely see them at some point. If you're running a local, I highly recommend incorporating them because most of us aren't working with ranges where we can easily stretch distance on paper. There's also the consideration that using scaled targets makes reset far easier rather than, you know, putting paper at 50 becomes a reset challenge because you're walking that far. You stick a micro at 25, you cut that distance in half and you still more or less test the same skill set. So great for that. I think that covers a lot of the general scoring stuff. For more in-depth scoring stuff, go check out the actual rule set. It's pretty straightforward if you're coming from other matches. There's not a lot to really concern yourself with there, but go give it a read because there might be something in there that stands out that you didn't catch from this video or didn't know already. So definitely check that out. Let's get into some of the more administrative side of PCSL. And again, just a general overview. So with PCSL 2-gun, there's 2 guns. right? So at some point you're going to transition from one to the other or back to one that you already shot the stage with, depending on what the stage is, right? There's going to be on a 2-gun stage a transition between rifle and pistol at some point, part of the game. So how is that handled within PCSL? For the most part, it's going to be via dump boxes. So you can see here, dump box with rifle, and here, dump box with pistol. Pretty straightforward. You're dumping your gun into the box and proceeding with the rest of the stage. In PCSL, your gun does not have to be unloaded to dump, but it does have to be safe. So with a rifle, safety on in the dump box, you can still have a round in the chamber. You're good to move on if it is fully within the dump box and that safety is engaged. Good to go. Pistol, if your pistol has a manual safety, that manual safety has to be engaged on the dump. If you're running something like a Glock, M&P, general striker fired gun where there's no manual safety, then it's just in the box. You don't have to clear it or anything like that. It's good to go as is. So pretty straightforward there. But if you fail to engage the safety and you have a safety, it's a procedural. So you're getting penalized in some fashion for failing to do that action. It's not a stage DQ, it's not a match DQ, but you're getting penalized for it. So make sure your safety is on before you go reaching in there. When it comes to slinging a rifle, there's going to be stages that require you to sling an unloaded rifle at some point within your PCSL journey. When that happens, you need to have a general idea as to what is to be done here. And I'm going to do a separate video on how to do the admin slinging and what's efficient, what's inefficient, and all that. But just know that you will have to sling an unloaded rifle at some point and move through a stage shooting pistol with that rifle attached to you. How you go about doing that, there's good ways, bad ways, and kind of middle of the road ways to do it. And sometimes it's going to be dependent on the stage, right? Sometimes it may be more efficient to do it one way. Sometimes you may really want to do it another way, even if it takes longer to get you into that sling position, right? Like over the back, it's going to take longer to get it back there, but you're going to be able to move far better than if it's dangling between your legs bouncing around. So it's kind of, demand of the stage there. So that will come up at some point. Again, I'm going to do a separate video on that, but it's an administrative thing that's going to happen. So consider it, practice putting your gun slung in some position, what have you. That covers the slinging. And next, when it comes to reholstering a pistol. So I already used the stage earlier in the video, but on that stage it was reholstering an unloaded pistol, proceeding with rifle, and then you shoot some more rifle, and then you reload pistol after dumping rifle and finish the stage with pistol. So little manipulation going on there. Reholstering a pistol is pretty straightforward. Most stages, if it's required, are going to have stipulations like the drop mag target, so it's going to be pretty self-explanatory. But you should go get a little comfortable with reholstering your pistol in whatever setup you have. Generally speaking, though, you're not going to be required, and I think it might not be within the rule set, to reholster a hot pistol, right? So that's not even something that I would really worry about. Most of the time, it's going to be set up on a stage to where it's efficient for you to dump your pistol, grab your rifle, because your rifle, for the most part, is going to be staged in a dump box in some capacity. And you're going to see a variety of dump boxes, barrels, what have you, for your rifle and pistol. So not a lot to worry about there. So I put up a Q&A in my Instagram stories the other day and asked people to ask any questions they would want covered on this video in a general overview. And I'll get into a lot of those later in the video, but one of the big ones that stood out is, if I'm coming from USPSA, what do I need to buy? For the most part, not a lot. So most of us are coming from USPSA with some sort of belt setup. You've got your mag pouches, hopefully a magnet, and then a holster of some sort. Depending on what your holster is, you're probably going to want to swap it. If you're running something like this, which is the carry concealment, there's not a lot of options to adjust retention. You're going to want retention in PCSL because you're running around with a hot loaded pistol on a stage while you're shooting rifle. And you might be sprinting, working around barricades. You don't want that thing to come bouncing out. And if you're running the retention most of us run in USPSA, it's going to come bouncing out when you move to the second position with rifle. So sort that. If you have some sort of retention holster already, you're good to go. Good test is, put it in the holster, whatever holster you end up getting, jump around with it, do some sprints with it, see if it's going to stay. That's my retention test, right? You can also just, stick it upside down, give it a good little shake, what have you. As far as mag pouches go, if your mags are staying in USPSA, you're probably good to go. I'm running the double alpha metal ones. These are more than good enough for an outside the waistband setup whenever I get around to doing a fresh one for PCSL. I'm just going to do these. I'm going to drop one or two and just put a rifle mag pouch on this. But one thing I've seen happen at Nationals to a buddy of mine actually is the Henning magnetic mag pouches. Not the move apparently for PCSL, and this was new to me, but it was a car start stage. He went to get out of the car and cleared all of his pistol mags on the exit because they weren't, trapped in a mag pouch like this. They're just magnetically clipped on, and they all wound up on the ground, and he had to run back and grab one when he realized he had no pistol mags on him. So consideration there, if you're running those, get something that's not going to have that happen. But as far as what you would need to add to this belt, say for a holster, most dudes are just going to need to buy a rifle mag pouch or two of some sort. Not a lot going on there. Pretty straightforward. Maybe drop a pistol mag. Most of us, I think, are running 3. So drop one, add a rifle pouch or 2, depending on the stage. I usually run 1 because most of the time in competition, I'm not actually having to reload. But if there's a reload in the mix, I want an oh shit mag of some sort for malfunction, drop mag, what have you. So then I'll slap on an extra one or just stick it in the pocket. But not a big deal there. As far as pouch considerations, I am currently running the Blade Tech drop down. I don't know if you can buy these individually anymore, but just a drop down pouch, and this puts the mag in a much more ideal position to grab it on a load. You're not kind of straining up to grab like a full hip mounted one. And then with this too, just using the little clip, I can clip it on my belt super easily and then add or subtract them as need be depending on the stage. So pretty straightforward there. And that's really about all you're going to need to buy as a USPSA shooter belt wise, is make sure your holster's sorted and get a couple mag pouches for rifle. Other than that, you're going to be good to go. So, as some of you may know, inside the waistband is also an option within PCSL, and shooting inside the waistband won me this amazing fucking motorcycle, which has yet to come in as of this video, hopefully soon. Hunter, hurry up, I want it. But yeah, you can shoot inside the waistband and potentially win really cool shit because Hunter's doing the belt bounty. So long as you use Hunter's belt and do whatever the stipulations are for him for that requirement. But this is it's an option. I wouldn't say it's the best option for 2-gun because with a lot of the dumping of rifle transitioning to pistol, it is slower. It's never going to be as quick as outside the waistband. It's, you're still fumbling and whatnot every now and then, no matter how much you practice. So it's a consideration there. But obviously you can still do very well shooting inside the waistband, even with all of the holdbacks. So it's an option if you're of that mind, practical setup, or you just want to win cool shit. So up to you. With running inside the waistband though, you still have to have a rifle mag pouch somewhere. With Hunter's deal, you don't have to have the rifle mag pouch concealed. So all I was doing, I just clipped one of these on my actual belt and was good to go. Not a big deal, pretty straightforward. And then you've got one pistol mag, you can stick another on either the magnet or an additional mag pouch. I'm sure you might have seen holsters with 2 pouches attached now. That's an option, but something else to figure out down the line. To cover a couple considerations though, if you're running a longer barrel versus a shorter barrel, know your ballistic stuff. Within PCSL though, the farthest you're going to be shooting rifle-wise is going to be 200 yards within 2-gun. Rifle only is a bit different. And then 8 MOA, so you're not really having to do a lot of the ballistic game, but it's still kind of good to know what your setup is capable of within 200 yards. So consider that. Consider if you're running a long barrel, there are going to be stages where 16 to 20 inches is not ideal to really navigate, but you can make it work very well. Like this stage here. So you can do CQB with a 16 inch if you get good. All right, ammo considerations. So I touched on this in the divisional differences, but in competition division, there is no power factor floor for handgun ammo. So if you want to download your handgun ammo to the point your gun barely cycles, have at it. I would recommend still going to a point where you're knocking down steel so you don't run into any issues with activated targets. With rifle, though, there is for sure an advantage to be gained by shooting lighter loaded 5.56 or 2.23. So with competition division, it's not going to be the deciding factor because you've got a muzzle brake on there, tuned gas, BCG, all that. But I will say, even with my highly tuned comp rifle, shooting a softer factory load or reloaded load makes a huge difference. So running 2.23 versus 5.56 in how the gun behaves. Not huge versus compared to what you're going to see in practical, but a consideration if you want to game a little bit farther. Practical, you can game quite a bit when it comes to ammo, and we saw some people do this at PCSL Nats where not only are they running lighter 2.23 ammo, they're running lighter bullets to soften up that recoil impulse a little bit more because you don't have the muzzle brake, reducing that muzzle rise. And lessening that muzzle rise with a little less recoil from your ammo is going to allow you to split a little bit faster at distance. So consideration there if you really want to game, it's a thing. Because running like really hot 5.56 like Winchester or anything like that, it's shootable, but it's definitely hitting you a little bit harder, and that's going to change up a little bit of that upper edge. For most people, it's not going to be the deciding factor. You're not going to win or lose the match because you shot one ammo versus another. But it's a consideration, right? If you're trying to gain a 0.1% over your buddy who you're competing against, you can game your ammo a little bit in PCSL. So gear setup's probably its own far more comprehensive video diving into the nuance of rifle setups, pistol setups, all of that. I'll save that for another time, but this should give you enough of a baseline as to what you need to be working with, right? Solid belt, solid holster, mag pouches that aren't going to dump your mags, couple things on rifle, right? Pretty straightforward. If you're coming from USPSA, you're going to be good to go buying, a couple mag pouches and maybe a new holster, but that's about it. So hopefully that overview was helpful for you if you're just getting into PCSL or have never shot PCSL but are planning to at some point in the future. Now I'm going to get into some questions that people had or topics that people had when it came to PCSL, because I put a Q&A up in my stories a few days ago on Instagram, and I had people ask what they would like to be covered in this video. So we're going to go through a few things there that people had asked. So, stage planning considerations or differences from USPSA. This is going to be a big one. So if you're coming from USPSA, you're used to generally at most, if you've shot majors, 32 round field courses. That's going to be your biggest stage unless you've got me as a match director and I'm making you shoot monster matches essentially on some stages. But you're shooting 32 rounds at most versus PCSL, you've got two guns and you're essentially shooting on most stages of field course back to back. So looking at nationals, I think most stages were somewhere in the 40 round range between both platforms. So you're looking at 10 to 15 to 20 rounds more than your average USPSA stage. That's the round count alone is a factor to consider. Another factor to consider is that you're running essentially two stage plans, right? It's not just one stage plan with one gun. You're running your pistol stage plan, dumping pistol, rifle stage plan, or vice versa. And within that, there's going to be a lot of overlap of the stage plan. It's not going to be like you'll see in some 3-gun stages where it's pretty linear, where it's like, all right, I'm going to run along here, shoot my pistol, run along here, shoot my rifle, run along here, shoot my shotgun. No, it's the same field course condensed on a bay, and you're going position to position, and this position may have some rifle and pistol, this position may just have rifle, this position may just have pistol, so on and so forth. And you're crisscrossing those stage plans. So you'll see a lot of people new to PCSL who are just used to one gun get a lot of the wires crossed in their brain, and the stage plans start to intermesh rather than be independent of each other. So that's a huge consideration, is if you don't have access to PCSL locals to really kind of work on the stage planning component, set up drills in your training to run stage plans back to back with both guns. It's going to be a challenge on top of the round count, right? Is you're not going to get good at PCSL shooting 10 round or less drills. So the Bill drill crew, they're not going to pull up and do very well. Pretty big difference there. Beyond that, the stage planning considerations are going to be very nuanced, and again, this is more than likely its own video, but hopefully that gives you a little insight into what you may be in for. Another question, when to start pistol versus rifle and staging guns. So for the most part, it's going to be a little split, is you're going to see stages that require you to start with one gun or the other. In that case, it's very clear cut. Your pistol is, if you're starting rifle, your pistol is going to be usually loaded and holstered. There might be a stipulation it's starting somewhere else, stage dependent. When it comes to picking and choosing, that's going to be a on-the-ground stage planning consideration. There's a ton of nuance to which one you want to start with. It's not going to be a black and white, always start with pistol, always start with rifle. There's so much going on there, so many factors that it's going to be stage by stage. As far as staging guns go, it's going to depend on, again, the stage or the dump boxes that are being utilized. I'll cover how to better stage a rifle in a separate video, probably kind of intertwine that with the sling video and some other gun handling stuff for two gun, just kind of ball all that together into one, maybe something like that. But yeah, it's going to be, again, stage dependent. If it's starting rifle in a dump box and you're starting with pistol, there's going to be better ways than others to stage your rifle in the dump box, better ways to stage your pistol in a dump box or wherever the pistol's starting. Stage dependent, right? And dump box variation is a factor as well. So next one, training strategy for people coming from pistol sports, time ammo split, moving, transitions. So deep topic here, but we'll just go into kind of the time ammo split and some training strategy. Like I mentioned before, train higher round count stuff. Is you're not going to get good at PCSL shooting 6 rounds with pistol and then transitioning and shooting 6 rounds with rifle. It's not a recipe for success, either on the mental side of things or the actual shooting demand that you're going to see on stages. And this goes for one gun sports as well. If you're shooting sub 10 round drills all the time, you're probably not going to get very far. But beyond that, how to split your time and ammo. So this is going to be pretty dependent on you as a shooter. If you are a top tier GM coming into PCSL and you've never touched a rifle in your life, that's going to require a little more devotion of your time and ammo than your pistol skill, right? So it's going to be a little give and take. If you're, like A class and you're shooting PCC over here one weekend and pistol over here the next weekend, it's going to be a little bit different for your time consumption between the two. That's going to be something you gauge independently when it comes to your training and assess, hopefully via local PCSL matches, what you need to put your time into on one platform versus another, and then within skill sets on those platforms, right? Pistol's pretty clear cut. Rifle, do I need to spend more time up close, mid-distance, long range, positional stuff, unsupported, all of that. Ton of considerations there. All right, the next one's always a fun one. Red dot magnifier versus LPVO and offset. So I ran nationals with an LPVO and an offset dot. Nationals could have been shot with iron sights, right? You could have been out there with, A2 sight post and been good to go. PCSL rules have it so nothing is beyond 200 yards and 8 MOA is the smallest you're going to see. At nationals, we saw a headbox partial essentially at 160, so it was configured like so it was a no shoot partial like this at 160. Kind of challenging, but definitely doable with iron sights. That was the hardest shot of the match. Everything else, like there was a couple opens at 160, but everything else for the most part easily doable with irons. Even that's doable with irons, right? So it's not a big factor within PCSL, but speaking from a match director perspective, I can make a stage where you're going to want an LPVO, especially with these in play, right? I have one down here Within PCSL, I believe I am allowed to stick this at 50 yards. You might want a little magnification for that. So having a red dot magnifier or an LPVO is going to be beneficial to you. Having that little bit of magnification to give you a little more clarity as to what's going on with your dot, definitely going to be a bit of a factor. Whether it's a red dot and a magnifier or an LPVO, separate discussion between the two there. I don't think one or the other was a deciding factor. The dude who won PCSL was running LPVO, and there was an interspersion of dots and magnifiers throughout the top 10, right? Little mix of everything with a couple people picking and choosing depending on the stage demand. So it's up to you. When it comes to building out a general purpose rifle for multi-gun sports or rifle-only sports, considering an LPVO is probably the better option. If you're just going to build one gun and call it good, kind of like I have with this setup where it's like my PCSL 2-gun one, my IPSC rifle one, my 3-gun one for 3-gunners, my PCSL rifle only because that's smaller targets, then an LPVO is probably the move. If you're going to have multiple platforms, having one with a dot, one with an LPVO, do that at your discretion. There's not a performance difference really to be had between the two. It's more on you as a shooter. Next one, which magnification on which targets at which ranges? Maybe not an intro topic. Yeah, definitely not an intro topic. This is something that I plan to cover in another video down the road because a lot of my training recently with the LPVO has been working from the 1.5x to 2x range on mid-distance stuff for various reasons that I'll go into more on that video. But I got to test and evaluate some of that at PCSL Nats, and I'm really liking what I'm seeing there. So utilizing low magnification, definitely a thing at some mid-distance stuff. Obviously, if you're stretching out to 200 yards in PCSL, having something like a 3x magnifier or an LPVO, definitely a benefit. Depending on what you're shooting, you may want the 3 power. I'd say everything within PCSL for the most part is going to be doable with 3 power. But sometimes depending on how the target is structured, right? Because there's various steel targets, having a couple extra power on magnification may be beneficial. So deeper dive. All right, so high mounts, LPVO, dots, and how that changes impacts up close, out to distance, or same with offset. So how does your mount height affect things? A ton, because you're shooting. For the most part, PCSL is going to be on the closer side of things. Most stuff you're going to be shooting is going to be sub 50 yards, if not sub 25, with farther targets tossed in more sparsely than you're going to see something at, say, 10 yards. So having something that's not egregiously offset from your barrel is going to be helpful. So running like, if you're one of the dudes out there running a 2-inch mount on your LPVO, like a 193 or whatever, and then you've got a top mount on top of that, you're talking what, like 5 or 6 inches offset from a target. So if you're shooting like, say it's like a head box, at 5 yards, you're aiming like up here to drop them into the T-zone. Personally, I'd rather not have to aim off paper anywhere. So that's a consideration. I run a 170 because that gives me kind of the best of both worlds when it comes to being a little more upright in the structure and position for unsupported shooting, but still able to get nice and tucked in when it comes to supported shooting. So just my preference there. But like I said, you're in for a bad time if you're running a ton of height. So consideration there. Yeah, same with an offset, right? So if you're running an offset, for the most part, I don't think there's a lot of variation in height to be had there, but it's a consideration if you're running risers or running some weird offset top mount like I've seen coming out. So just consider how much you're having to hold over and how that's going to affect you. More technical than intro, but I'd like 100+ yard offhand stability versus confirmation tips. Not exactly intro. So maybe referencing the stage at PCSL Nats where they had a shooting 100-yard steel, or 110, something like that, off a shaky bridge offhand, so unsupported. Yeah, so adjusting stance and structure is going to give you gains to be had there. The nitty-gritty of that and the nuance of that is, again, not an intro topic, but play with stance and structure and see what nets more stability when you need it versus more aggression up close for better recoil management. deeper dive that I plan to do at some point. But I run and I'm currently kind of T&Eing this, a 2-stance system for rifle shooting. Training priorities and crossover between rifle and pistol. So you'll hear people say that a lot of pistol skill translates to rifle. Yes and no. So a lot of the concepts translate to rifle skill, as well as, say, like your visual acuity, your knowledge on how to train, stuff like that, right? But you shooting pistol is not going to, like, if you're a GM with a pistol, you're not going to step up and be a GM with a rifle. As we saw with some of the people who just got into PCSL at Nationals, which awesome to see them getting into it, but I think some of them got a little bit of an awakening as to the demand of rifle skill on top of pistol or PCC skill, right? So it's not a direct correlation. There's nuance to be had, but a lot of the concepts translate over. So the concept of, effectively managing recoil, effectively utilizing confirmation levels, stuff like that. There's crossover there, but for the most part, treat them as they are, which is separate platforms, and train the skill sets within each platform individually. Like, you doing work with pistol at distance isn't going to make you good with rifle at distance. So just a consideration there. Split your time appropriately. How is appendix inside the waistband for 2-gun? Not great. Really fucking not great. So it's going to be stage dependent, but aside from the time and the fumble potential on dumps and transitions to rifle or pistol, shooting positional stuff with a holstered gun or just a holster setup on the stomach, not great. So if you're sitting there and you're in a tight kneeling position and you've got a holstered pistol with like my Shadow 2 where it's got the massive beaver tail, kind of sucks, right? So like leaving 2-gun matches where there's been a high positional demand, I've had bruises like the size of a paintball on my stomach from where that beaver tail was. I assume you could see the same thing with other guns as well. It's not comfortable because it's jamming into you. And then you're just forced into odd positions. That's there. Inside the waistband with full-size guns, not comfortable to begin with. No matter what people say, a few of them skirt the truth on that. It's not great. The time loss on manipulations is its own thing. But yeah, it kind of sucks. It kind of sucks, to be honest. But you could win a motorcycle. So there is that. So now we get into a couple interesting ones, and we'll wrap it after these. Stage design for new to PCSL MDs. So I'm not sure if this person meant that they are new to just PCSL and have previously match directed USPSA or 3-gun. But we'll do that, and then we'll answer the next option. So like you're just brand new. So if you've done USPSA stages and you've done 3-gun stages or what have you, doing PCSL stages isn't going to be a huge lift for you. It's going to be understanding enough of the skill testing that rifle is and how to incorporate that onto a stage effectively and efficiently. So you're not, bogging down on reset or anything like that. And you're also testing a variety of rifle skills. You don't want it to be a hose fest. Like, I don't want to step up to a 2-gun match and feel like I could have brought a PCC. If I feel as if I could have brought a PCC, the 2-gun match failed, in my opinion. I want to step up and I want to feel like I've actually brought value to bringing a rifle, right? I needed to bring my rifle to the 2-gun match, even if there's bay restrictions. In some way, you've stretched the accuracy demand in such a way to where PCC is not really viable on at least one stage. Beyond that, looking at matchbooks from previous PCSL Nationals, the GOAT match this year, the West Coast Championship this year, will give you some ideas as to how to effectively put together a 2-gun stage. And then you can pull ideas from that. Also on my Instagram, I have a stage design highlight that you can check out, and I post up all the stages that I design for the locals I run there. You can pull some inspiration there. I'm planning to do a more comprehensive video at some point for stage design for match directors in general, because it's not easy when you're first getting started, or even years down the line. So that's coming at some point. It's a challenge, but in the meantime, looking at previous matches is a great place to start. And the one we're going to wrap on, growing PCSL. This comes down to you guys. This is on you. I'm doing my part, and it's running PCSL matches locally. It's doing videos like this. It's promoting it on Instagram. It's shooting it. It's spreading the word to people within USPSA, 3-gun, other shooting sports, or who are just they're not in the match space at all, but they want to get into it. This is how you do it. You spread the word. You get people showing up to matches. You get matches up and running. Like, I started my own PCSL match because there was nothing in my area for me to shoot. I wanted to shoot 2-gun. I wanted to shoot PCSL. I made it happen. And I'm just like you guys. It's on you. If you want to shoot PCSL and there's nothing near you, figure out how to start up a match. Talk to your local range. Talk to other match directors who run USPSA, IDPA. See what you can do to at least get a foot in the door, to at some point get out there and run a PCSL match. If there's a PCSL match local to you and you're already shooting it, get out there, help them. Speaking as a match director, we need help. So show up, do whatever you can to help. Volunteer day of, volunteer day before, build stages, just anything. Talk to local shooters at your range, right? If you see some dude doing 2R2 drills, transitioning to rifle, stuff like that, walk up to him and be like, hey man, this coming weekend, there's a 2-gun match. It's PCSL, check it out. Send him this video or what have you. Get him signed up, get him to sign up his buddies, get him to come out and shoot. That's how you grow this sport. PCSL on the top level is doing an amazing job, far better than USPSA, far better than 3-gun, but it's still the ground game that matters. The ground game is how you get people into the sport and get them shooting it. Spread the word, do your part. So this video wound up being a lot longer than I initially planned, because I think I said at some point in this it was going to be 10 to 20 minutes. It's not 10 to 20 minutes, but hopefully you found some value somewhere within this video to get into PCSL. If you're already in it, get a little more knowledge down. And hopefully this can serve as a tool to more veteran PCSL shooters to send over to someone who wants to get into it. Just check it out, what have you. If there's any questions or anything you guys would like covered in a future video, drop them in the comments. I'll answer a few, or maybe put together a video down the road. Like I said, a few videos planned when it comes to PCSL stuff, topics covered within this one. So those are coming at some point, hopefully by the end of the year. If not, early in the year, they'll be coming out. But keep an eye out for those. That about covers it. See you guys next time.